Lord, lift me high, lift me high, lift me higher. Hi.
So can you please tell us who you are?
Well, I have a lot of different names. Right now, the name I'm using the most with my friends and my co-religionist is Shulamit, Shulamit Shifra. But I was born Linda Sue Rosner. My father was Jewish, and my mother was Cuban Catholic. Daddy was first generation American. His parents came from Eastern Europe. Mother was from a very wealthy Cuban family in Guantanamo. And he was in the Navy. He was stationed at the U.S. Naval Base during World War II in Guantanamo, before Guantanamo became a bad word. Daddy was a doctor, Mom was a pharmacist. And I guess after they got married, 10 months later, boom, I was here.
How did his parents accept the getting married into a non-Jew?
When they were engaged, kept saying, when are you going to tell your parents? When are you going to introduce me to your parents? They're in Brooklyn, and Mom and Dad are in Guantanamo. And my dad just said, you don't know my parents. Daddy married a shiksa. And they were very upset. A lot of times when my grandparents would argue, you know, with Daddy, how could he do this? She would pretend, my mom would pretend she didn't understand any English, which was not true. But she won them over. She was very charming. So when I was 6, my Cuban grandfather came to visit us. And when he found out that Mom had not baptized me, he was livid. He was furious. And so Mom went to the priest in our town and said, I need to baptize my daughter. Well, why didn't you baptize her when she was born? Well, my husband's Jewish. Well, I'm not going to baptize your daughter unless your husband converts. That wasn't going to happen. And Mom was really so upset. She mentioned it to the next door neighbor, Mrs. Stanley, and Mrs. Stanley said, Irma, your father doesn't know English, does he? And Mom said, no. Does he understand English? And Mom said, not a word. Well, then take Linda to my Episcopal church. They'll baptize her, and he'll be none the wiser. So that's what they did.
He won't know that it's not Catholic.
Exactly.
Grandparents from your father's side ever show you any Judaism? Did they practice any of it?
They did. They were Orthodox, but not Orthodox like Black Hats. So they were in Crown Heights. That's where my dad was raised, but they were not Hasidic. They were actually misnagdim. But yeah, I remember we were in New York until I was almost 5. And a lot of times when Mom and Dad had to go someplace, they would drop me off at Grandma and Grandpa's. And I actually did see a fish in the bathtub one day. It really impressed me, a live fish in the bathtub. And this is the secret that I don't think the rest of the family knows, but Grandma said to me, I want you to become Jewish. I want you to become Jewish. You can become Jewish. And just thinking about her brings tears to my eyes.
So if we take you back to your spiritual journey.
For a couple of years, I didn't really have a religion. And by the time I was 17 and I was starting to meet hippies, like this was 1965, I started learning a little bit about Hinduism. A couple of years later, when I met the man that became my first husband, we became disciples of Swami Satchidananda. We were vegetarians. We were living in the woods in Mendocino. I thought it was beautiful. I liked it a lot. But I was hitchhiking one day, and a woman picked me up, and she had been a missionary to Guatemala. I know an Ethiopian Jew who is a believer in Jesus. I said, wow, that's wild. So sure enough, she got us talking to each other. He came, he spoke at the chapel service, very handsome, but I ended up marrying him. And it was a mistake. Although I got 3 amazing children from it, but it was very, very painful. The culture were too different. His attitude towards a woman's role was so archaic and so abusive. My husband was very, very violent, and I left him.
Your kids were being raised as
Messianic. I mean, I had 2 sets of dishes. We celebrated the Jewish holidays. We lit candles on Shabbat.
Because that's what Messianics do.
Right, except for they believe that the Messiah has already come and Jesus, Yeshua, is the Mashiach. So that's how the children were raised. And little by little I realized, I don't believe this anymore. I don't believe in the Trinity. I don't believe in all of these important tenets of Christianity. I could not be a Christian anymore because it just didn't make sense. And I started going to the synagogue in Pasadena and spent a lot of time talking with the rabbi there. Wonderful, wonderful man. He told me, you still have this love connection with Jesus. You're not going to be able to convert until you figure that one out. Picture a picture of Jesus on the wall. When you can come to the point where you can say, thank you very much for how much you've helped me in my life. And it took me 6 years. So I went to the Rosh Beit Din, and he had me, you cannot believe what they put you through. You can't believe it. I had to fill out one application for my employment history, another application for my family history, another application for my religious experiences. And
how old were you by then?
I was 46 years old. And then they put me through hell. I'll never forget, Rabbi Weiss had me crying because he said, how do I know you're not getting into this to convert Jews to Christ? You were Messianic, you were going to be a missionary, you were going to be licensed as a minister. You're just trying to get inside so that you can take people away from Judaism. And I'm crying, no, you have no idea what I've gone through to come to this point. So in February of 1996, I went to the mikveh.
So where did your children find themselves after their mother suddenly became an Orthodox Jew?
That's an interesting aspect. My daughter Rebecca likes Hanukkah candles, and once in a while she'll light Shabbat candles, and she likes to do Passover Seder with us. And my youngest, Jared, considers himself a Hebrew, but religiously he says that he's a Taoist, and I'm going, okay. Then this is even weirder. My oldest son, Benjamin, fell in love with Pakistani Muslim, and he wanted to marry her, so her parents said, you can't marry her unless you become a Muslim. So he did. And then my younger daughter and her husband, they converted to Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity.
You have everything.
It's pretty wild.
Wow.
It's pretty wild. But I have to say this about Judaism. I mean, obviously, 25 years is a long time. And from the moment that I made the decision to convert, I felt like I grew roots. For the first time in my life, I really felt rooted and stabilized, and it just fits me. Wow. It fits me in my own little kind of hippie-ish Cuban, you name the combinations. It just fits me. It feels like home. It's the best decision I ever made. I really, really love being Jewish. Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tsar meod, gesher tsar meod, gesher tsar meod. Kol ha'olam kulo gesher tsar meod, gesher tsar meod. והעיקר, והעיקר, לא לפחד, לא לפחד כלל, והעיקר, והעיקר, לא לפחד כלל. The important thing is don't be afraid.
So beautiful.